Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Blade the Series, Episode 9. So, we're here today to focus back on other things besides Blade, because other people have other things to do. So much so that we're focusing on Chase, which I guess the ends justify the means for Chase's story in this episode. Krista is going to be dealing with a lot of, let's just say, family matters in this episode. Krista is to deal with the loss of her mother, let's just say. So, really, Blade is also having to deal with Krista's loss, let's just say. And so... And, Ray Collins, I actually like this guy. I'm really liking this character. I'm liking the way that this detective is being built as, this kind of, Looney Tunes-ish, detective that, is so far close to just, people just bringing in the straitjacket and just sending this guy off to a mental hospital. Because this guy, what he is saying doesn't seem all quite that rational. And if it is rational, then there are people that are just I don't want the truth getting out there because I don't want anybody to know because I'm a familiar. I'm assuming or assessing. So, really, this review is dedicated to Lisa Starr. R.I.P. because she had, sadly enough, died in the last episode. And so, really, the focus of this episode is to deal with that kind of loss, let's just say. So, if anyways, that's, I think, all that I have for this episode. So, Chase is to go into Las Vegas to meet a guy named Alex, and that story plays out. Blade is to find out that there is something missing in his hideout, and so now he has to go and figure out who had taken some of Blade's stuff. So that's great. That's his little mystery to be solved. But other than that, there's nothing new being introduced much of this episode. There isn't much of, this kind of feels, honestly, like a filler episode, but, there is kind of, this emotional ending where, some people might have dealt with a loss of a loved one and stuff like that, so maybe you can connect with this episode, or maybe you can't, I don't know. But with that said, that's all that I have, even in cryptic sense, for this episode. And I really tried to dig deep to just try to figure out, how could I still cryptically talk about this episode? Because this is kind of a filler episode. There's nothing going on. Krista is to continue her fight with Gwyneth, and that is going to be a pretty cool fight. Really, just a lot of bashing through walls and bashing through ceilings, and that fight was pretty cool. But yeah, so really, that's all I got. That's it. We're gonna get into spoiler time if pretty much after this. So let's just dust out that double five because it's that coveted time to just say spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this episode. I had to slowly trickle that out because how much time am I really going to have to review all this stuff? So, very beginning of episode, Krista, Gwyneth fighting. Really, we get some walls smashing through, ceilings smashing through with bodies. Pretty cool fight scene just because of its very aggressive. Gwyneth is calling Krista a traitor, and because So if you don't remember, maybe because all these episodes might become a blur at some point. Eventually, if you watch this entire playthrough in one shot, which that would be great, but if you watch everything in one shot, you'll know Serum. But it is what it is. So Krista is to throw and toss Gwyneth through another wall, and Ray Collins is trying to get into the middle of these vampires, but that ends him freaking getting like tossed and chucked everywhere. So really, Krista is to go and smash a mirror into Gwyneth, and so Gwyneth is like, "Oh, there's glass all over my chest. Well, that sucks." So Gwyneth just pulls this big, huge, chunking piece of mirror out of her chest. And Krista is like, well, I guess you didn't know that mirrors used to be lined with silver. Since when? But okay, sure. And so all of a sudden, Gwyneth is turning into a big old skeleton and falling and dying. And then Krista is to hear a crashing sound, and her mother is to escape because she is still alive as a vampire. Really, I spent a lot of time curving in cryptic-like sense, seeming like Lisa Starr is dead, but she is not. She is going to have a whole story arc, I'm sure, leading to the brutal point of when Krista is just going to have to just decide what to do with her mother. Like, I'm sure it's going to be a huge story arc because there's so many episodes left of here. They're going to take that whole entire story and carry that to the end. I'm sure, right? Because you'd be wrong. Anyways, so Krista is to eventually have, like, Ray Collins is still just like, what are you? And so Krista is to, of course, Chuck Collins, because Krista is having Collins be in the way of Krista trying to get to her mother. And so Krista just freaking chucks Collins into this desk. And then he's like, dude, I'm just getting freaking, like, haggled around like I'm nothing. Like I'm just a slab of meat for all these women to just oogle over. So Krista goes off to try to find Mother, and Mother is to make her way to Pat. Lisa is to make her way to Pat, and really just want a really good meal when she is to make her way to Pat. Meaning, sadly, Pat is hopefully no longer going to ever be a thing on this show, because Lisa had sadly enough consumed him with sucking of her teeth. So that's great. The whole Lisa story is going the way it is, to just kind of get rid of some people that might have been an annoyance to some people at some points, aka Krista. So Chase is going off to Las Vegas to go to a club of sorts that might have women that may not have tops on, and that's a big thumbs up for some people. Or really, there might have been some people that might have just been like, yeah, thank God. I just wanted to see something naked for once, and I got to see it in this episode. So it's great. So, not that I desperately needed it, because I could have went to any number of things, but it's great to have that in this show. You know? So Chase is to go off to Las Vegas to try and broker a deal with this owner of this club. And the owner is like, dude, you're effing me, right? Like, you're effing me. Like, if Marcus is gonna F me, like, I want him to do it in person. Like, I don't want him to send some lackey out here. I am not interested in your deal. Goodbye. So Alex, one guy randomly who is at this club, who is to see Chase and be like, I want to go and find this girl. Like, I want my guy to find out where she is because I want to make it to her spot. So Chase is to go back into her room, and so Alex is to knock on the door and bring in some champagne. And so at first we were to assume that Alex is just some random guy that Chase is going to be like, oh, well, I'm just going to get a nibble out of this guy because he's stupid. But instead, we find that Alex is a vampire himself because he had been waiting for 60 years for Chase to come back to him because evidently both of these characters have some backstory. Isn't that interesting? Alex is actually a pure-blood vampire, and Chase is a turned vampire, so I guess Chase is to be considered a less than. But Alex, like, doesn't mind about that to the point of when they are to start losing some clothes at some point and doing almost the horizontal mambo at some point. Really, it feels like love is in the air, and like Chase is kind of contemplating like kind of going and staying at Las Vegas because she is to kind of feel that Marcus doesn't really need her anymore, that like he's kind of outgrown her kind of thing, and plus also he has a new toy to play with, which is Krista. So Chase is kind of looking for her happily ever after, and I guess she is to have this be technically Alex. So eventually Marcus is to come to the fray as both Alex and Chase have gotten and done their business. So Marcus is like, what are you doing with this pure blood? Like, what are you doing? Like, aren't you a little crazy? So, here's the thing that I don't understand. So, Marcus sends Chase out to Las Vegas just to go there himself. What a giant waste of time. Marcus could have went to that deal himself. Because basically, like, so that way he could F that guy anyways, because that's what that guy wanted, bizarrely. So, Marcus is talking to Chase while Alex is there, and so Marcus is talking crap to Alex, and so Chase is getting dressed, and Alex is like, you know what, people like you, you're trash, you're garbage, you're just a lesser than, you're just an infection, you're just this, you're just that, blah 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 blah. And Chase is regarding what Alex is saying about just Marcus to also be about her, and Alex is like, wait a minute, like that, like I wasn't, like I was looking at this guy and talking, not you, but not you, woman, I was looking at this guy and just berating him because of how he berated me, and so I thought we were equally berating each other, only me and him, not third party person that I just bestushed and bestuffed and did so on and so forth. So Chase Marcus is to go back to the place that they call home, and Alex is to make his way back to Marcus and Chase's place to just say, hey, you know what, I'm going to buy Chase from you, Marcus. Like, I'm going to free her because I want her to be mine. Like, I want her to be, like, not mine, like, he loves her. It's obvious. Like, he's trying to do anything to just, like, make Chase happy, because it seems that Chase isn't happy. So that's what Alex is trying to do, is to make Chase happy. And he figures that being with her happy. So and Marcus is like, well, hey, like, yeah, this sounds like a good deal. How about we shake on it? And how about we just drink on it? And then Alex is to be doing some drinking, and then he is to be passing out, and then he is to wake up on a medical table to get the Aurora to go inside of him. Like, they kind of like do this weird concoction of Aurora to find out that they can easily kill off purebloods with this mixture of Aurora. And so I guess this weapon that didn't seem at first to pay off really is paying off now to kill off purebloods, and woohoo for that. So let's get back to the Blade stuff, because Blade is actually in this show, I hope. So Blade is to have his wound on his chest, and Shen is like, hey, you should probably do something about that. And Blade is like, well, you know what you should do? Your job. How about you do your job? How about you do it a little bit better? How very few things does Shen actually do in this show? Like, I've never seen, like, look at Norman Reedus in one movie. Like, Norman Reedus did a billion things for Blade, and he wasn't even working on his side. Shen is, like, working for Blade, and it's been 9 episodes, and, like, Shen has really done bub kiss lick of nothing within these 9 episodes to just be like, hey, Blade, here's this brand spanking new weapon that I've been working on. Hey, Blade, here's this new brand spanking new whichever thing to kill all vampires with just a flip of the wrist. Hey, like, here's a thing of dynamite that only just kills vampires, because I just figured that out somehow. Man, even when Whistler was in the first Blade movie, like, he was just like, here you go, son, here's a bunch of gadgets and everything that I made, and, like, again, like, Shen hasn't really proved 100% of his worth, but sometimes Shen does save Blade from time to time. But, man, that Shen guy, like, I wish that he was consistently, like, popping out things, but he's not. Like, he still hasn't come up with the inhaler thing that was 9 episodes ago supposed to have him be building. A little confused. So, Blade is to just say, like, well, like, you know what, I think if I just get some serum in me, I will be fine. So, Blade goes and checks his serum supply, and it's really running low. And so Blade is looking at Shen, it's like, dude, you had one job. You're not even doing that right. Like, stock some shells there, buddy. Like, what do you do all day? Fight vampires and help me consistently with everything? Jesus, Shen. Oh my god, man. So, Blade is to go and check the cameras to find out that Krista had taken a huge chunk of supply of the serum, and they automatically, I guess, come to the consensus that, like, well, yeah, it seems that Krista is probably not getting this for her own self. It must seem like she's getting it for someone else. So Blade and Shen are to make it to Krista's old home and see how much damage is there, and it seems Blade notices that there's a vampire that had gone down, and Shen is like, well, do you think it's Krista? And Blade is like, no, like, I think they need her for another couple episodes before the show wraps up, so, like, I think Krista is still alive. So So Krista re-arrives into her home and mentions to Blade and Shen, like, I lost her, I need to find her again. And so Blade goes and he's upset with Krista, so he just punches a door. He just punches the door next to her. He just punches a hole in it. This is a person. Vampires can heal from everything. But Blade just punches a door to hurt himself, not hurt Krista. But I guess to be like showcasing how upset he is with Krista that he wants to actually punch her, but instead he just wants to punch this door. And Blade says nothing. Dude, for once you could have had Blade actually had a really long monologue here, because Blade never says nothing. And so Blade could have had this one moment where he's like, you know what, I am really just disappointed in you right now. Like, yeah, there's been times where I've been really, like, I think I have been, like, really thinking of you in such high regard. And now I'm just looking at you as just the next thing that I'm probably going to have to kill. Because you are getting sloppy. And, like, your sloppiness is hitting everybody. It's even hitting me. So now I have to go and watch over you to make sure you do something correctly. How bad is that Krista has to in this episode have Blade be watching over her, because Blade could have actually gone and sought out his father, because Shen was like, hey man, like, your dad last episode, like, are you gonna go and like talk to your dad? Are you gonna go and see him? And Blade is like, no man, like, no, like, he was just the guy holding the bag. Like, I'm not going with that. Yeah, so I love Shaft. So what? Like, doesn't everybody? Samuel Jackson also did the movie Shaft, so, like, things change. Also, Roundtree, I think his name was also in Jeepers Creepers. I think the last one, the tail end of that, but still, freaking Shaft. Dang right. So, moving on. So Krista and Blade are now looking for Lisa's trail. So Lisa makes her way to Pat to give him a little sweet nibble. Pat is kind of checking over Lisa and kind of mentioning how cold she is, how she has these bizarre marks on her arm, and like Pat is also mentioning like, hey, about that nurse that you had, like, why? Like, I called the house but nobody responded. Like, shouldn't that nurse have been with you? And Lisa's like, you know what? I'm just so hungry. Nibble, nibble, nibble. Guess what? Pat's dead. Honestly, like, I liked that guy. I liked Pat, but you know what? Kind of annoying. Kind of just annoying character, to be brutally honest. So, Collins is to make his way to Marcus Van Sciver's place. Because really everything is starting to lead around to Marcus Van Sciver, and Collins is thinking that if he is to go to Marcus Van Sciver, that eventually that'll lead him back to Krista, because what are you? Here. Ah! Batman Begins. Where are you? Here. Ah! I'm scared. I'm scared, Batman. Anyways. But that happens a little bit down the road, because Lisa is to eventually start to have these visions of Krista's being bitten And so now Lisa knows where Krista is to hang her hat, and so Lisa is like, dude, I'm gonna go to the House of Chthon and try to find my daughter because, like, I want to talk to her, and also probably do a little eating along the way, if you know what I mean. So, both Blade and Krista start following Lisa's trail. Blade thought that Lisa was probably going to make it to Zack Star's grave, but that never happens in this episode. So this all leads to Krista realizing, well, like, hey, I got a vision of my past before. Maybe my mother did, and maybe that's going to lead her to go back to the House of Chthon. And so both Blade and Krista make their way back there to the House of Chthon. Krista starts walking in to start seeing her mother being grabbed by these goons and walked out. So Krista now has to try and hide herself away from Collins and make her way back to try to grab her mother. And that eventually leads with Collins going to Marcus Van Sciver, and Marcus is to play off that him and Krista have had this like on and off kind of hot and cold relationship where like Marcus was just so intrigued by her one day, but like really like whenever she shows up is whenever she shows up. Like Marcus is probably like he's playing this off as like, well, hey, maybe it will happen, maybe it won't happen, and so Collins is asking him questions about like a familiar tattoo and a number of kind of things that Marcus is saying that he doesn't have the answer for, but he's lying, and Collins calls him on that, and Marcus is like, well, whatever. Like you and me, this talk is done. Like this is over. Like I get out of here. Go. Go to talk to your superior, and your superior is going to think that you're a loon, and more than likely he's going to take care of you, whatever that means, by the tail end of this episode. Because Collins does go to his superior, Mac, I think, and Mac is to, like, say, man, you need to talk to a therapist. Like, the stuff that you're saying doesn't sound real. Like, you sound crazy. You need to go to see a therapist right now. And so, both Mac and Collins, like, they're trying to, like, figure out the whole Collins thing and how to help him. But it seems that Mac, I guess, or Sorensen is, I guess, trying to do the right thing, but we never know. I'm assuming that probably Sorensen probably knows what's going on, and so he's like trying to just like say that Collins is crazy to anybody else, so that way like kind of just goes away. Like Collins goes back into the crazy house and problem resolved. So Krista is to find her mother in an ambulance, and so Krista is to really just try to like give like her mother, sadly, like this metaphor is going to be awful, but you'll understand where I'm going with this. So Lisa is like a dog, and so Krista is like holding a bone in front of her, saying like, hey, like, do you want to come with me to like try to get her off the bandwagon of consistently murdering and killing people? So Chris is like, hey, come with me, like I'll help you, like I'll go and I'll get you what you need, which is eventually serum. Like I know that was a horrible analogy, but you get what I'm trying to say, where like Krista is trying to persuade Lisa to go with her, and she eventually does. So uh, Lisa goes back to Blade's hideout, and Krista starts pumping serum into this woman like there's no tomorrow. And consistently, Lisa is pulling off the exorcist like nobody's business. She's not like barfing on anybody or spinning her head, but like there's a lot of times where she's just freaking rude to her own daughter. Like, how could she? Dog and a bone analogy out of the way, but still, like, this woman is kind of rude to her daughter. What kind of person does that? So so Krista is continually pumping in serum into Lisa, and it won't do. Shen is like, yeah, she's been feeding for too long, she's been turned for too long, it's not going to work now. And so Krista is like, so what do I do next? And Blade is like, leave it to me. And Krista's like, no. Lisa eventually just starts to just get really angry, upset, and Lisa just breaks out of her chair, and because she's smelling Shen and smelling that blood of his, and so Lisa just starts to break out of her chair, and Krista is like, Mom. And Lisa turns to Krista. Krista has a gun and fires, and that's how the episode ends. So now let's get to the conclusion, if I hadn't already, about Alex. So Alex is to wake up with the Aurora mixture being put into him, and he is to basically get destroyed, and like he turns into a real mess. But the last thing that he says before he dies to Chase is that he really did love her, and Chase is like, well, like, I love you too for what you're gonna do for us. And it's like, man, that is gonna be like the coldest. Like, Chase was like playing Alex this whole entire time. Because I can't believe that Chase was gonna give up everything for Alex. But it will be interesting, maybe in the next episode, for maybe Chase to finally confess, no, like, I really want to do that. But like, I could not, like, choose between my brother and this guy. And so, like, so yeah, like, so it may be some interesting stories coming eventually. But with that said, I am going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.